Hello, and thank you for attending my presentation about Glutonny's brand new secondary, the mid-tier hero of time, Link. Before we get into this, I just need to say, this video is incredibly biased. I love counterpick meta and secondaries. If this sort of talk is for you, then congrats, you can check out my other secondary videos I've made. If this isn't for you, oh well. Now getting into it, let's play a fun little game. These three characters, Steve, Sonic, and Game & Watch, are these the top three characters on the Lumi rank tier list, or are these the bottom three matchups for Wario in Smash Ultimate? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Congrats, if you gave an answer, you win, because it's just both. Wario meta is in shambles right now. Wario struggles against these three characters hard, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. Wario wasn't always like this, however. Wario was an early meta king, having good matchups into Inkling, Roy, Peach, Rob, and Fox. These are incredibly good matchups to have early on, including matchups like Cloud, which weren't exactly a real character back then, but was starting to be on the upswing. This is compounded with the fact that Japan loved Wario. Many top Japanese players had a pocket Wario. He was genuinely believed to be the best character in the game back then. And part of the reason for that is this frame data, which, I'm gonna be real, I don't like looking at frame data, I never have, but if this is your thing, here it is for you. Anyways, moving on. Ultimate's current meta really does not favor stubby characters like Wario. He can't force Sonic to scrap, he can't safely break blocks, and he cannot pressure Mr. Game & Watch. In conclusion with that, Wario just kinda gets camped. However, shouldn't Waft help camping? Not exactly. You only ever get one or maybe two wafts per game, depending on the timer and if it's a timeout and when you use your first waft. More characters can just time out Wario after he gets his first waft. After all, it's not like holding onto it is going to make the waft any stronger past a certain point. Now, let's take a look at the stats. How has Glutonny actually done versus these characters versus how it goes on paper? Spoiler alert, it hasn't gone great. Already with this, we can see a glaring problem, which is 0-4 versus Sonic's. While yes, Sonic's is an amazing player, Glutonny is very good in his own right, and the 2-2 versus Ken might not seem that bad. However, watching the games, it's clear to see that Wario is not doing him any favors in them. Next up, for Steve, versus the top two Steves, it's looking even worse. I would, however, like to mention that this is slightly inaccurate. Gluto does have a win on Akola. It was just in spring of 2023. As of recent, none of their encounters have gone the way of the Wario. And lastly here, we've got Game & Watch. This is probably the one he's had the most amount of time to learn, and still not looking great. Game & Watch is a character that wants you to jump into him with an unsafe aerial, and that's kind of Wario's whole game plan. Wario gets a lot off of Nair, Fair, and Up Air, and those are all moves that Game & Watch is looking to exploit with his Up B. This matchup is a case of, you have to give Game & Watch what he wants, or else you play a worse version of your character. Because of this, Glutonny looked into many different secondaries. First off was Wolf. Why Wolf? It doesn't cover Steve, it doesn't cover Sonic, and it does not cover Game & Watch, at least to my knowledge. The only reason I can see this is because they play similar enough to Wario, they're an easy-ish character to learn, and at the time, he wasn't really looking to cover Sonic and Steve. But nowadays, the Glutonny Wolf isn't really a great choice for him. Next up was Glutonny's Roy. It doesn't really cover Steve that well, but it does okay into Game & Watch, and actually covers Sonic extremely well. He's easy to learn, and it was at a time where Glutonny thought he could still kind of just deal with Steve in the Wario matchup. Overall, this is a pretty fantastic choice, and I kind of wish it worked out. After that was Glutonny's Snake. It actually is probably the best choice out of all of these so far. It covers Steve and Sonic damn well, and just kind of falters against Game & Watch. However, Glutonny has proved this matchup is doable by having set wins on Game & Watch. The only problem I can really see is that Glutonny's Snake didn't really look all too put together in the tournaments we saw it. It looked like it was more trying to fill a role than being a character he actually enjoyed playing. I'm going to be looking at Link in a different way because I actively like this counterpick, and it is what the video is focused around. Link is a weird mid-tier that's just generally kinda unexplored. He has a pretty solid kit, including a good forward air, nair, back air, and down B. I like remote bomb. He has the range that Wario lacks that might end up making a lot more matchups a lot more feasible. We'll get to those in specific in a bit. And lastly, the Link is just kinda fun to watch, man. I don't know what you want from me. According to this matchup chart by Isahel in 2023, Link does pretty good into Sonic and Steve for what you can expect from a mid-tier, and goes even into Game & Watch, alongside going even into the fighting game characters, which Wario actually actively struggles with. So, how is Glutonny putting this Wario into practice? Well, he's farming Europe. Yeah, that's kind of it. He's brought it overseas for the Reaper Invitational, and we got to see it beat Cosmos, which is actually pretty impressive, but we haven't seen it all too much yet, other than just farming EU locals and regionals. Still, this is a lot of practice and how I believe you should be practicing an experimental secondary like this. Do not fall back on your main. Go solo them for a little bit. We've seen the same thing work out for many different top players over the years. Akala has done that with Aegis. He got wins on tons of top Japanese players before using it successfully on Spargo. Over in Melee, we've seen two different EU players actually do this exact same thing. One was Armada's Fox, and the other was Leffen Sheik, with Leffen Sheik being his answer for the Marth matchup, and a pretty damn good one at that, and Armada's Fox being one half of his legacy at this point. It's gained wins on both Susu and Justin Byleth, being notable Steve players, one from EU, one from the US, though we do need to mention how Susu did need to give up a stock due to controller malfunctions. It's also got wins on Cosmos, Flo, and Rurkyor, Cosmos in specific being a big one, as Aegis is quite often listed as Link's worst matchup, alongside wins on Orion and Netoru, both being very big EU threats. While a lot of these matchups may not be the ones that Glutonny explicitly wants Link for, it is a good sign that he is learning them for it. In order to secondary a character at the level that he wants to, you need to fundamentally understand the character. And playing them in both their good and bad matchups does that. I will also mention, I have seen him practicing those TAS-Link combos. Who knows if we'll see them in tournament, but it is interesting to see. However, the big test for Link is right around the corner as I'm recording this video. If you're watching this a bit too late, then Genesis X2 already happened and we'll have seen how this Link does. Link is not an easy character, and we don't really know if Gluto is ready for a tournament of this caliber yet. And Glutonny's path, alongside being the path of my nightmares, also includes 2 Game & Watches and 2 Steves. He is projected to beat both Steves when his Steve matchup has never really looked too confident. Still, this will show if the Link is ready or not, and I think it's a pretty damn good test for it. I believe late 2024 and early 2025 have been defined by their counterpicks. Recently, we've seen Spargo, MKLeo, and Glutonny all pick up characters to help with their problem matchups. MKLeo's Meta Knight to potentially help with the Rats and definitely help with Min Min. We've seen it work. Alongside MKLeo picking up Byleth, if you want to count that. Spargo picking up Roy, which I've talked about far too much recently. And Glutonny, which, hey, that's what I'm making this video about. This is such a unique time in Ultimate's meta. People are more willing to experiment with characters now than ever before. In a meta that's said to be as harsh as this one is, it's honestly really cool to see. People are digging through mid and low tiers just to see what can work for each scenario. Characters like Corrin are viable now. The #1 in the world isn't just playing the #1 character solo anymore. And #2 in the 2024 end of year ranking has a Mii sword fighter. In conclusion, I really like the Glutonny Link. I think it's a neat experimental secondary, and I am actively rooting for it whenever I see it. This character low-key kinda does well into this meta if you really think about it, and are willing to play some -1s. We are 6 years into this game. Please experiment with more characters if you are thinking about it at this point. We don't have much time left. My name is Indigo. This video was inspired by ElectricWindGirlfriend. Go check her out, and do your daily click for Palestine right now.